It was the start of a brand new decade, and a newly turned 7-year-old would start to explore the idea of buying music on his own, no longer beholden to what his mother or stepfather listened to. And that year, he began truly getting interested in music and record collecting. I know because I was that person. The year was 1970. I'm TC Kirkham, and this is Vinyl Recall. Hey VC, TC Kirkham, the Kirkham Report here. Welcome to Vinyl Recall. This is my take on the Thread series that was started by Vinyl Richie a few months ago, where people are naming their favorite albums from each particular year. Mine are going to be a lot different because I'm a pop person. Most of the people who are doing this are metal people or hard rock people. And you're going to see some of that as we go along. But I've had to go back and check everything year by year, and it was very difficult to do because, hey, a lot of the stuff I picked up in later years rather than at that time. I'm also sticking strictly with vinyl. No CDs, no cassettes, only what I've picked up on vinyl over the years. And we're going to do it year by year just like everybody else. And we're going to start with 1970. Why 1970? Because 1970 was a big year for me. I turned 7 years old in March. And I had started listening to music when I was a very small child. My mom was an avid music fan, always had music playing either on the radio or on the stereo. And I became a big fan of everything that she listened to, and I became fans of songs she didn't like also, which mystified her. Over the years, this early education would manifest as I started to pick up a few records when I was 4, 5, 6. But I really started getting into it when I started getting a weekly allowance when I was 6 and 7. I would get $1 a week, and that would be enough to buy a couple new singles or a new cutout album or a bargain bin album. And I was always buying music. There was a great time in as 1970 and 1971 where we lived in a small town at the time called Utica. It was in north central Ohio, north of Newark, south of Mount Vernon, 13 miles either way. And I spent the first few years of my formative years as a music fan in this small town of about 1,200 people. A lot of what I purchased is no longer playable unless I picked up new copies, but I still have some of them. And some of these are reissues, and some of them are stuff I've picked up more recently that I've always enjoyed. And I went through all the songs that was in, all the albums that were out in 1970. I'm using Wikipedia as a reference, and I'm going through what I have dated properly in Discogs. There was some confusion about 1970 because an album that Discogs says is 1970 in America came out, according to Wikipedia, in 1971, and I'll include it in the 1971 issues. But in any case, I went through everything I had. I had to really search to pull a couple of these because I wasn't sure where they were in my collection, and found them. And now I'm here, and I'm going to present to you my top 10 of what I actually own. These are not going to be my top 10 albums. I don't own Simon & Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water, but I love it. I've heard it online. I had tapes of it over the years. I've loved a lot of other stuff that came out in 1970 as well. Unfortunately, none of it would be the ones that the hard rock community would love, like Led Zeppelin and all those I would never put on my list simply because I'm not a big fan. What I am a fan of is All Over the Road, as you'll see. And so we'll go up from 10 to 1 on my favorite albums from that year. Number 10 is an album I first heard when we bought a copy of it to give to my grandparents. They were huge fans of the television series this man was starring in at the time, and it turned out he was quite a vocalist. I actually picked up a copy of this album from Adam at Record Crate about 2 years ago and took a listen to it, and I'm like, yeah, it's as great as I remembered it. It was fun, it's country pop, and he didn't do a lot of singing in his later career, but back then when he was starring in a show called Then Came Bronson, he managed to have a couple of big hit albums. This is Michael Parks and Long Lonesome Highway. It was issued on MGM Records back in 1970. Long Lonesome Highway was actually a hit on the country chart. May have made the pop chart too, I don't remember. But he has a collection of great music on here. And I always enjoyed listening to this. My grandparents were always playing it. And so when Adam had a copy of it, and Park's second album also, I picked up both of them a couple years ago. And I've listened to it a couple of times since then. And it stands out as a favorite from then, even though I don't really remember the television show, although my mom and stepdad were fans of it. Mountain High, California's Fine, Yonder Comes the Blues, Sunshine Showers, Big Tea Water, Summer Days, Long Lonesome Highway, My Melancholy Baby, I Think of You, and Re-Enlistment Blues, all from actor and singer Michael Parks. There's the backside. And this copy is in great shape and terrific to listen to and terrific to have that nostalgia hit me again. So number 10, Long Lonesome Highway from Michael Parks. Number 9, if you're a fan of me, you've seen me show this a couple of times. And while the premise is goofy, the music, of course, was not really done by the characters from the television show. And it's actually quite good. It's gotten good reviews. It did well enough to get a reissue from Enjoy the Ride last year. This is the OG that I picked up about 3 years ago on Dunhill Records. And laugh all you want to, but it's good pop psych at its best. Lancelot Link and the Evolution Revolution, number 9 on my list. This has all the songs that were done on the Lancelot Link television show, which, you know, I didn't know anything about animal cruelty and stuff at the time, and those animals were not well taken care of. But the music, I found the show hilariously funny as a kid. I found it hilariously funny as a guy in my 20s when Nickelodeon started rerunning it in the late 80s. And I still find it funny. I know these animals probably weren't treated well, but the dialogue is so cheesy and the music so fun that it helps make up for some of that. Yummy Love, Wild Dreams, Jelly Beans, Daydream, Blind Date, Rollin' in the Clover, Shala, I Love You, Magic Feeling, Evolution Revolution, Teaser, Kissing Doll, Vibrations, and Live, or Live, front cover and back cover. Let me check real quick. I don't know for sure if I can get it out of the sleeve here. Is it going to be a pain? Yeah, there's no inner sleeve on it. I'm not sure who did the vocals and such. It's probably listed on Discogs. But there is a reissue, which I also picked up. The reissue was published at 45 RPM and sounds great. This is also great sounding. If you're into psych, and you like pop psych, or sunshine pop psych, even better, because that's what it actually falls down to, then Lancelot Link and the Evolution Revolution might be worth checking out. You'll be surprised. The music is pretty damn good. Number 8 on my list is an album I first got in the late 70s when I met the gentleman who was part of this duo at the time. It's been a group and a duo. And they never had any major hits on the pop chart, but they did have some airplay on religious channels. They've been around for they were around for quite a while. I know Jim Moore, last time I looked, had retired. But this album features my favorite song by him, and as a result, it got played a lot when I was in my teens. And I have all of their albums, which I purchased when he came to our church a number of times in Harrington. This is Dust and Ashes and their album From Both Sides. Jim Moore is on the side my face is on. Is that the left side? I can't tell. On the right side, his partner is Tom Page, and that's the gentleman with the darker hair and the glasses. Dust and Ashes were praise music, but they put contemporary spins on it. Courage to Be, I've Tried to Love, Lord, The Road of Life, Doing Nothing for Hours, I Want Justice, Get Together, the popular song that was out from the Youngbloods, I think. Jesus Met the Woman in the Well, their take on Joni Mitchell's Both Sides Now. Where Once Proud Mansions Lay, Gethsemane, Love and Sound, and Is It Love, Lady. Um, if you are a Christian and you have never heard the song Gethsemane by Jim Moore, you do not know what you are missing. This song is unbelievably good, and I love this album. Still to this day, I still play it every now and then, particularly around Easter when the music really starts getting to me. I really love this album, Dust and Ashes and From Both Sides, 1970s, released by them. Number 7 on my list might surprise people. I picked this up as a hand-me-down from neighbors who were moving and gave me a box of their albums, and they're like, these are great, we're not going to have room for them, you take them. So I did. Some of them were okay. Others were those cheesy rip-off albums, but I did get a couple of doozies in it, and one of them is here on this list, and the other one is the other album that came out in 1970 by this gentleman. And I'm going to surprise people that I actually like somebody the vinyl community likes. Michael Nesmith and the First National Band and Magnetic South. This features his only solo top 40 hit, Joanne. The rest of the music on this album is so good. It's pop with a country feel, a little bit of Nashville sound. And the other album that came out this year, let me look at my notes here, is Loose Salute, is also a favorite. But this one I love even more. Calico Girlfriend, Nine Times Blue, Little Red Rider, The Crippled Lion, Joanne, First National Rag, Mama Nantucket, The Keys to the Car, Hollywood, One Rose, and Beyond the Blue Horizon. A lot of these were demoed as Monkey songs, and they didn't record them. Great cast, and he does dedicate the album to Davey, Mickey, Peter, Lester Still, and Bert Schneider, all of whom helped Michael become the media superstar he would become in the 70s and 80s thanks to his production company. He was the first person to ever release a music video cassette, which was the Elephant Parts collection in 1979, I believe. Home video hadn't yet really taken off. This is on a typical RCA label of the day, the orange. Really fantastic music. Nesmith was always underrated by the average person, but those of us who know his music love it, and I do. Number 7, Michael Nesmith and the First National Band, Magnetic South. Gotta get a drink here. My mouth is getting a bit dry. Number 6 introduced me to an artist who I have adored the rest of my life. I continue to adore the music he puts out now, and the redone music he's done since re-emerging into the music scene back in 2009, 2010, after 30 years away. This album is phenomenally good, and again, I had heard the album numerous times. Various friends had it. I had the singles from the album, and again, I picked it up when Adam had it on the sale at Record Crate, and to me, it is just one of the best albums ever. Tea for the Tillerman from Cat Stevens. This was the album that introduced him to most people, although he had a couple of minor hits before this. Has Wild World on it, along with Where Do the Children Play, Hard-Headed Woman, Sad Lisa, Miles from Nowhere, But I Might Die Tonight, Longer, I can't even read the titles here, Longer Boats, Into White, On the Road to Find Out, Father and Son, and Tea for the Tillerman. I would later go on to get several more of Cat's albums, including Catch Bullet 4. I have the Greatest Hits collection, and I have the first 2 CDs of his music where he is now just using his Muslim name, Yusuf. Now it's being Yusuf Cat Stevens, so people know who he is. But it is so good to have him back again, and he is absolutely, still to this day, one of my all-time favorite rock artists. Number 6 on my list, Tea for the Tillerman from Cat Stevens. Number 5, I don't think this is in playable shape anymore. I bought this. This was one of the first albums I bought with my own money in 1970 when I was 7 years old. It's a great album. It got played a lot on my little GE Kids record player, which probably was 10 times worse than a Crosley on these records. But I'll tell you, It's been marked up and written on because I didn't know any better back then. And one day I will get a new copy of this cover. It was reissued with a new cover and a slightly different title. Well, it's same title, but it's not done the same way it was here. And the singer's name was added. At the time, the singer was anonymous because he was worried about losing his day job. I am talking, of course, number 5, Candida by Tony Orlando and Dawn. Tony Orlando was not yet known as the singer of the album, and of course the title of the album is Candida and Knock 3 Times Now, which are the 2 big hit singles to come out of this. Also, What Are You Doing Sunday was a big hit, along with Up on the Roof, Country, Look At, Rainy Day Man, Carolina in My Mind, Let's Run Away Girl, The Love in Your Eyes, and a very short little 30-second number called Perhaps the Joy of Giving. I played this album to death when I was 7 and 8. Love Knock 3 Times, love Candida. I love the whole album, obviously, or it wouldn't be here. It's just a fantastic album, and it was produced by Phil and Mitch Margot of the Tokens. They were the ones that were also responsible over the years for a number of other artists. They were responsible for getting Tony back into the industry. He'd been a younger singer in the 60s, and they would also later produce a couple of my grails, Sneaker and Laces album called Skateboarding, and Christy and Jimmy McNichol's album, which we'll probably be seeing later on in the 70s. Candida from Dawn, number 5. Great, Sunshine Pop again. Number 4, I never had the album. I had the tape. When I was a little kid, I had a tape of this album, and it got eaten when I was like, I don't know, 9. And I never got it again. I had all the singles, and I had the Greatest Hits anthology. But when it came out again on Record Store Day, I think it was this year in April, I was like, you know, I'm going to grab that because I love the album, and I miss hearing some of the album tracks, although I can listen to them on Spotify, but it's not quite the same. And it's just a great thing to have because it is such a great album. ABC, Jackson 5, number 4 on my list. This is the 2022 Record Store Day reissue with the recreation of the wonderful Motown logo on this wonderful blue vinyl. This album, of course, spawned 3 number 1 hits, ABC, The Love You Save, and... Oh, is that... Oh, those are the only 2. The other 2 were on the second album, the third album. Or one of them's on the first album. The 2 of them are on the second album, and I'll Be There is on the third album. It's very confusing because they had 3 albums out in a year, and it was like, whoa. The Love You Save, One More Chance, ABC 2468, Come Round Here, I'm the One You Need, Don't Know Why I Love You, Never Had a Dream Come True, True Love Can Be Beautiful, La La Means I Love You, I Bet You, I Found That Girl, and The Young Folks. This reissue is awesome. The sound quality is stupendous. It is absolutely worth the $27 I paid for it, or $25, 27. It's a great album, and it is seminal in the Jackson 5's early career, along with Diana Ross and introducing Diana Introduces, and whatever it is, and the album, which I can't remember the name of, that has I'll Be There on it. This was just a phenomenally good album, and it still is. And let me make sure that date. Yeah, it is April. It is the 22 Store Day. I can never keep this straight. Number 4, Jackson 5 and ABC. Number 3, again, I'm a pop fan. I'm sorry. But you know something? There are a lot. I am amazed and overjoyed to find so many fans of this group in the VC. I know of 3 or 4 at least, besides my friend Dawn of Two Hip Chicks, also my pal Jeff at Calico Silver, the other Jeff at Jeff McCormick's Rock Hard, I can't think of what the name is, Dr. Combat, I think, is another one. There's a whole bunch of fans of this group. They're Sunshine Pop fans, and there's nothing better when it comes to Sunshine Pop, as far as I'm concerned, Then the Partridge Family. The Partridge Family album, my number 3 album from 1970. This is the debut album from the first season of the television series, covering the first half of the first season. Up to Date would be out in 1971, covering the back half. Of course, there are 3 songs on this album which feature the Ron Hicklin singers as the vocalists. To Be Lovers, which features David on the bridge, but that's it. I Really Want to Know You, and probably my favorite song on the entire album, I'm on the Road, which I play whenever we go to the Cape. That's the first song I play on my headset, is I'm on the Road. I love that song. This also includes, of course, their number 1 smash, I Think I Love You, along with Brand New Me, Point Me in the Direction of Albuquerque, Vandela, Only a Moment Ago, I Can Feel Your Heartbeat, I'm on the Road, To Be Lovers, Somebody Wants to Love You, I Think I Love You, and Singing My Song. Just terrific stuff. And of course, none of the rest of the band except for Shirley Jones actually sang on the album. Shirley and David were the only ones. Bonaducci tried to do his own solo album, which he now contends he didn't do hardly any of the vocals on it. It was all Bruce Roberts. But I've listened to the 2 of them. Danny and Bruce don't sound anything alike. I don't know. Great album. Played endlessly after I got it for Christmas in 1970. This is an older copy. I do have, I have recently purchased from Adam again, a much better shape album copy of this album, and I do have it on CD also. The Partridge Family album, number 3 on my list from 1970. Number 2. I've talked about this recently because I recently picked up a CD collection by this group that includes this album. This album, I was never able to play all the way through because the first song on side 2, which was their big hit, skips all the way through. The rest of the album is pristine. It plays fine. That one song, the one song I bought the damn thing for, I could never play. I had to buy a 45 oldie of it to play it. But I'll tell you something. I love this album. I still love this album. I bought the CD collection that came out about 4 years ago that has this album and their second album on it and a bunch of extras that weren't released. And it is fantastic. And this is the American release because in England and throughout most of Europe, and I think in Canada too, it was just called White Plains. In America, it's called My Baby Loves Lovin'. That is the name of the big hit they had from this album. But this album is full of songs that to me are just gold. Now, I've scribbled all over it, as you can see, as a kid. The album cover is in crappy shape. The album is in crappy shape. One day, I may actually invest on vinyl again, but now that I have the CD, I don't need to. But I listened to this album so much, skipping over that first song. I with one exception, I love this whole album. It is pure sunshine, bubblegum, pop, whatever you want to call it, at its best. I've Got You on My Mind, When Tomorrow Comes Tomorrow, Taffeta Rose, and Summer Morning, and In a Moment of Madness. Those 3 songs are still in my top 100 of all time. My Baby Loves Lovin', Today I Killed a Man I Didn't Know, which is the one song I'm not really that fond of. You Got Your Troubles, Show Me Your Hand, and Sunny Honey Girl, produced by Roger Greenway and Roger Cook. This was a masterpiece for its time. Now, it pales in comparison to some later bubblegum, and not everybody in the vinyl community would like this kind of pop. But if you like My Baby Loves Lovin' as the song, just the single, you'll like the entire album. It's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Number 2 on my list, with 3 of my favorite songs from that year, My Baby Loves Lovin' by White Plains. Now, number 1. You guys have got to have figured out what number 1 is on my list by now. You know about my love for them. You know I practically worship the woman walked the ground the woman walked on. I have talked about her endlessly in 2 years. And it shows them at their diverse best. And while I don't consider it my favorite album by them, it is still absolutely the best album that came out in 1970. Close to You by Carpenters. It is listed on Rolling Stone's top 500 albums of all time. It deserves to be there. This album includes We've Only Just Begun, Love is Surrender, Maybe It's You, Reason to Believe, Help, They Long to Be Close to You, Baby It's You, I'll Never Fall in Love Again, Crescent Noon, Mr. Gooder, I Keep on Loving You, and another song. I'm going to take another drink before I talk about this album. This album was out, and I think the second album had come out, the third album, Carpenters, the Tan album, had come out when they were hosting, by the time they were hosting Make Your Own Kind of Music in the summer of 1971. They did a lot of the songs on there at the time, and it was so much fun, and you can catch the clips online. Close to You, We've Only Just Begun are two staple songs, I think, for the entire industry. Not just for that time, but for all time. Close to You and We've Only Just Begun are universally renowned and loved songs. But this album has some real gems on it that if you're not familiar with this album, you should find it and listen to it. The Carpenters' arrangement of Help, which Richard arranged, it's done very psyche, is my favorite version of that song. I love the Carpenters' version of Help. Another song that they had, that Richard in recent years has had some misgivings about, but that actually became a modest hit in Japan, is Mr. Gooder. Mr. Gooder was the flip side, I believe, of one of the later singles from Carpenters. And it is a tale of woe about the man who ran the department that Richard Carpenter and his songwriting partner John Bettis worked at Disneyland in the 1960s. They were piano players at the gay 90s ice cream parlor, and they kept deviating from the prescribed music to play requests from the audience, which they were not allowed to do. Mr. Gooder was the name of their supervisor, and they have lambasted him for being a corporate guy in this song that is, it is so brilliantly satiric. Richard and John obviously wrote it. It is one of my favorite Carpenters album tracks, and it's just terrific. And I don't know if Vic Gooder ever heard it or commented on it, but it wasn't very complimentary, but I can't say I blame John and Richard for feeling that way either. Their version of Reason to Believe was actually first when it came to remakes. Of course, Rod McEwen wrote it, made it famous. Rod Stewart would release it as a single in 1971. His version wasn't released until after the Carpenters, and their version is terrific also. We also get to hear Richard in the spotlight here a little bit more than usual. He does part of the lead on Love is Surrender, which is adapted from a contemporary Christian musical. They changed the lyrics a bit to make it less to make it more secular, and a song called I Kept on Loving You. Terrific things and terrific songs, and that's another Williams Nichols composition, which We've Only Just Begun was. There is just there's no replacing this at number one on my 1970s list, and thank you, Dawn, for getting me this great copy on one of your auctions. It is in great shape. It plays with very little ticks and pops. And While Horizon remains my favorite Carpenters album, and we'll talk about that when we get to 1975, I'm sure. This is up there. It is a terrific album. It deserves its distinction on the Rolling Stones list, and it shows off the true variety of stars Karen and Richard were really styles that Karen and Richard were really capable of. They were capable of a lot more than what they actually did. So those are my top 10 albums of 1970. And I know some of you are going to think, wow, I never expected that from him when it comes to Cat Stevens or Michael Parks or Jackson 5. And there's those of you going, it's TC, of course he likes Tony Orlando and Don and the Carpenters and Lancelot Link at the Evolution Revolution. I'm going to be an eye-opener for everybody out there who keeps up with this. It'll be up every Wednesday afternoon, and I hope that you will enjoy it. And I'm going to go year by year. It's difficult because, I really don't really class things by year. I class them by style or mood or whatever. So I've had to go back and do research on what came out when. Also in future episodes, unlike this one because I didn't have the time to do it, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite singles of the year, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about I'll pick my favorite soundtrack or two, because with a few exceptions, I'm putting those in their own category. Some soundtracks were so huge that I will include them in the top 10, but more often than not, I'll just have them in a separate category. My favorite soundtrack album of 1970 was the score from Airport, which I picked up from, I'd loved always, because I'm a big disaster movie fan, and I love that film. But I picked up the score album from Adam a couple years ago for a song, and it was sealed. Fabulous album. And I'll also be talking about a Christmas album or two each year. And those will be coming up in weeks ahead. But for now, those are my top 10. I'd love to know what you think of them, so please be sure to leave a comment. And love to know what some of your favorite albums of 1970 were. And next time around, we'll be here for 1971. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. And if you have, thank you very much. And as I said, don't forget to leave a comment, because your comments are what help give me ideas and help keep me going. Without it, I'm nobody. I'm just a person out here spewing words out my mouth with all different kinds of stuff that just people go, oh, that TC. Hey, I can bring a little amusement to somebody's day. That's all the better. For Vinyl Recall, I'm TC Kirkham, the Kirkham Report. We'll see you next week. Ciao, baby.